Arizona State beats Michigan State again. Iowa beats Iowa State again. BYU wins back-to-back in OT thrillers. Can they make it 3 in a row against their toughest opponent yet? All Central Florida does is win. So why does Mitch appear to believe more in Pitt than the electrifying Knights? And speaking of this week's action, we have a handful of big games to get excited about, including Notre Dame getting another shot at respect when they travel to Athens for the first time ever. All this and more on OFN College Football Weekly with Mitch Light of Athlon Sports for this Thursday, the 19th of September, 2019, on the Our-Lads Football Radio Network, brought to you by ourlads.com, providing the best pro and college football depth charts in the industry. And Athlon Sports, the leading publisher of preseason annuals for more than 50 years, sold in 60,000 outlets nationwide, including Athlon's 2019 College Football Annual, which is available at your local newsstands now. Mitch, we got some really good games this week to get excited about. I'm pumped.
Yes, not the first week of conference play, but really the first week where a vast majority of the teams are playing conference games, or a decent amount. So all games matter. Conference games seem to matter more.
And, of course, we've got a bunch of injury notes to talk about, so we'll have that ready to go as we go through each game. Got your picks, and we'll get into that as well. Let's just wrap up a little bit of what happened last week. That Arizona State-Michigan State game, wow. I don't – if you're a Michigan State fan, it's just got to be just – you can say what you want about offensive line injuries. That's no excuse. And praise Arizona State's defense, no question. Their defense is the best that we've seen it in a long time, and Herm Edwards with the pro staff is doing a great job there. But something's just missing with Michigan State's offense, and for their defense to be so good, and you give up 10 points to last on a touchdown with the last few seconds to go in a game. You can't win at home. I mean, that's got to be frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt about it. And, the thing about Michigan State, well, I thought they, week 2, I know it was just Western Michigan, but they played so well, 8.7 yards per play. I thought maybe they turned the corner, but they regressed. And your point about D'Antonio, I think as fans of the sport, well, a lot of fans think they know more than the coaches. Rational fans can understand that it's a very complex game. There's a lot of X's and O's that we don't understand. There's a lot of things going on in the field that we don't know. But we know when to call timeouts. We know when to spike the ball. We know that you can't have 12 men on the field when you're trying to win a game. So it's things like that frustrate fans the most. And then D'Antonio, after the game, has the nerve to go up there and say, we need to look at the officiating. Well, no, you need to look at getting 11 guys on the field. You need to look at spiking the ball or having some decisiveness about when you're going to kick and when you're not.
Yeah, that's true. And you do take a look at this offensive line. So Chewins has been out all year, the left tackle. Curry's also injured, the number 2. They moved Kevin Jarvis, the guard, over to tackle. Now he's out 6 weeks. So last year they used 9 different combinations, 13 games. That mess is continuing this year, and that's not good. You're going up against Graziano and that Northwestern defense, which is the strength of their team right now, and you have them as one of your picks, not one of your top picks, right? Just one of your picks.
Northwestern, yes.
And this is a game where I'm thinking very seriously about putting them as a double digit because they're 9.5, so I can make that 10, and I can go 3-1.
Oh, I didn't know that. I might have picked them.
You want to?
9.5 to me is 9.5. It's not 10.
You can do it. Well, again, we
your rules, your game, your rules.
We buy half points.
Okay.
So you want to go ahead and do that?
No, it's okay. I'll play by the rules.
Okay, I don't know what that means, but okay. You do have of course the upset you picked. We kind of touched up on that in the open, but we'll get to it. But anyway, Northwestern 3-1 dog, and they have beaten Michigan State the last 3 years in this same exact spot as dogs in all 3 games. And they've won in high-scoring games, which is really weird for these two programs. First road game for the Spartans after what happened last week. This is starting to sniff like Pat Fitzgerald's got it right where he wants him again.
Yeah, I mean, 29 points, 39 points and 54 points in the last 3 games for Northwestern against Michigan State. This one seems a little too good to be true, but Northwestern has its issues too.
Yeah, they do.
Hunter
Sure.
Johnson has not been good at quarterback,
Nope.
and that's one of the underrated stories of the season so far for me. It's only been 2 games, and he split the first game with T.J. Green, who's out now. But if Hunter Johnson's not good, that kind of resets our thinking on Northwestern and their ability to be in the West.
Because it was different when they had Thorson. They were winning these games.
Yeah.
This is different.
Yeah.
And Bowser, if Bowser's back, I feel a lot better because we don't know yet if Bowser's going to be back. I think there's a good chance he's going to be back. Maybe they just said, let's not play him last week to make sure he's healthy this week, which happens. So I could see that happening, but that's a big deal. And I don't think the line's going to move much at all if Bowser comes back.
I don't know how much of a line mover he is. He's a good running back. But this is a great spot for Northwestern, but again, they haven't exactly given us much confidence to believe they can score a lot of points. So they only scored 7 points against Stanford. Then look what Stanford's done the following 2 weeks after that.
Absolutely. All right, sticking in the Big Ten. Well, first of all, I will Arizona State, because great job by Herm Edwards. Terrific job. He's got Benjamin, and he had Harry last year, but it's not the offense. And I know he's got a freshman quarterback. The kid's got a ways to go, but he's not doing anything stupid to lose games. And again, the defense at Arizona State coming through. They're taking on Colorado this week, and I think this is a good spot for Arizona State, actually. They're only a 7-point favorite at home against Colorado, who lost last week. And Arizona State has won and covered the last 4 at home against Colorado. And overall, Arizona State's been a good Pac-12 cover team compared to Colorado over the years. I think this is a good one for Arizona State being a 7-point home favorite on Saturday night.
Yeah, I went this game from the spread. I couldn't get a good read on. I like Arizona State at home. Colorado is coming off kind of an emotional stretch. They're Mel Tucker's first 3 games. First game you play Colorado State, a rival that you're supposed to beat, and if you don't, it's bad. Then they're playing Nebraska, their biggest rival, who they haven't played at home in years. And then they play Air Force, an in-state team that they hadn't played since 1974, which they lost to. So this is like their first game where, there's pressure in every game, but they played with that staff, coached its first 3 games and a lot of pressure in games they were expected to win.
Yeah, and those are back-to-back overtime games.
Yes.
And this is their first road game. And by the way, speaking of road openers for Colorado, 2-14 straight up in the last 16. It's not good for Colorado. But yeah, I think Arizona State right now just have way too much going for them. Spread is 7 though. Speaking of Air Force, I'll tell you what, Friday game, Air Force, might as well talk about that one because both of us thought Air Force could be an intriguing team when we went over our preseason Mountain West Conference talk. And sure enough, they get the win last week at Colorado. They're at Boise on Friday night. And I think this is going to be a good one. I really do. I think Air Force has got a shot in this one. Boise, for whatever reason, they seem to struggle at home on weeknights. I have no idea why that is. Get this, they're 6-18-1 against the spread the last 4 years as a home favorite, overall, just as a home favorite. And if you take a look at, again, the fact that on weekdays, they're 0-7 against the spread in their last 7 as a home favorite of less than 23 in a weekday spot. But I like Air Force. I think this is a good. They're 8-point dogs, plus 250 on the money line. I think this one goes down to the wire. I'm not sure if they win the game, but I think this is going to be a close football game.
Yeah, Air Force have had some success. I believe more than any other Mountain West team. I believe they beat them 2 or 3 times in a row recently. I don't have it right in front of me. And that's an interesting stat. My guess would be maybe some of the reasons they're struggling a little bit week games is because they're made for TV, so they're playing pretty good teams. They played Virginia a couple of years ago. This is a good team, so they're not playing any pushovers on a Thursday or Friday night. But still, it's still an intriguing stat. But I wouldn't surprise me at all. Air Force, obviously, I think they caught Colorado at a good spot for Air Force. But that I was wrong in that game. I picked Colorado to cover.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I thought so, too, because good vibes for Colorado at that point. And we hadn't really seen Air Force yet this year.
Right, sure. They played one game against an FCS
Yep.
team, so that was, really they were a mystery team coming off that 5-7 season.
And they're 11-2 against the spread in the last 13 games as dogs of 7 points or more. They've also covered. They're 5-1-1 against the spread in their last 7 against Boise. So as you said, they played them tough recently. All right, back to the Big Ten, Iowa over Iowa State. And, that was one of those games. You just got the feeling at certain points of the second half, especially late, that Iowa State was in trouble because you just felt that they should have put Iowa away, and that the longer that Iowa just kept hitting field goals and hanging around, that knowing the series, the rivalry that Iowa has dominated, when you get in a close game in a rivalry situation, usually the teams that know how to win find out a way to win, and they did again. And Iowa State, especially with that last turnover, found a way to lose.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And, Iowa State's had some good years recently, but from, recent history standpoint, Iowa's clearly the program that, quote unquote, knows how to win. They've won 4 straight. Matt Campbell still has not defeated Iowa, but a frustrating game for Iowa. They outgained them for a lot of the game. They were the more efficient offensive team, and they forced Iowa to settle for field goals and all that, and they looked like they were in position to make a move late, and then that just it's kind of bad luck on the short punt, but that just can't happen.
Now, by the way, Iowa State is taking on your Sunbelt sleepers this week, Louisiana Monroe. Last time we saw them, they almost beat Florida State. That's a big line. Think there's any chance for Monroe to keep it close?
I mean, they got a pretty good offense. Monroe does, and obviously they made Florida State sweat, more than sweat. Iowa State, you'd like to think that they have, the coaches can get their attention because they have not been good offensively in either game. So, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Monroe goes in there and scores some points, but I'd like to see the offense pick it up for Iowa State.
All right, BYU with the big win over USC, back-to-back overtime W's, and, boy, they could be 0-3, and they could be looking for a new head coach at the end of the season. But instead, they're 2-1. They've won big games. They lost to a very good Utah game. Now they take on Washington. This is the life of an independent when you put together these types of schedules. First road game for the Huskies. I haven't been overly impressed yet with Washington this season. They lost a lot on defense. Eason's a good quarterback, but jury's still out on whether or not he's a huge improvement over Browning. BYU, get this, they're 10-0 against the spread as dogs of less than 9 points after they win. After they win a game straight up, and of course they beat USC last week, so that's a pretty good number for Washington. 6 points. Some people might look at it the way that we talked about it last week with USC. It's got too easy. I mean, it's a low spread. It's Washington against BYU. I mean, come on. They can't do this back-to-back weeks against teams like in the Pac-12. But you know what? When things are going well the way they're going at BYU, I think this game is going to be a good football game. I think Washington's in for a fight.
Yeah, I agree. BYU, after this week, they'll be the only team in the country that's played 4 Power 5 opponents, and that's just the nature of their schedule, as you mentioned, as an independent. And it's difficult this early in the season to be that emotionally ready. They've had to be, Utah rivalry game going into Tennessee. That was an emotional game. USC, whenever USC comes to town, that's big. Washington. So Washington kind of flexed its muscles last week against Hawaii, but Hawaii is an awful defense. I've doubted BYU all season. I'm now a believer, which means Washington will probably go in there and win.
All right. BYU fans, they don't want you to. Shh. Don't say anything. Okay. By the way, Washington is dealing with receiver injuries. And Ty Jones has been out. Pounds is suspended. So they do have a few guys there that are not available to Eason. Let's take a look at this week's big game between Notre Dame and Georgia. Big point spread. I guess it's not a surprise that the point spread is up to 14 right now. It's amazing that these two storied programs have only faced each other twice before. The first time was that Herschel Walker 80 championship team at the Sugar Bowl for Georgia. And, of course, recently we know what happened there a couple years ago. That was Jake Fromm's first career start at Notre Dame. The Irish are 10-1 against the spread their last 11 games when they do have revenge after a straight-up win. Georgia, meanwhile, first time hosting Notre Dame. That place is going to be crazy.
Yeah, I mean it's my favorite venue, favorite stop on the SEC. They're estimating there could be as many as 90,000 people outside the stadium without tickets, which is a lot for Athens, not a big town. I like Georgia to win. I think they'll win comfortably. I don't necessarily think they'll run them off the field, but Notre Dame's had trouble stopping the run. New Mexico's a running team, so I get that, but Louisville had a lot of success there, and obviously Georgia, that's its strength, is running the ball. I like what I've seen from the two freshman receivers, Pickens and Blaylock, that kind of filling an area of need for them. So I just think Georgia is the better team. And Notre Dame, no shame in losing no shame in if you lose at Georgia by two touchdowns. I mean, Georgia might be the best team in the country, or they're among the top 2 or 3 teams in the country.
Yeah, Notre Dame. I wonder if they if as long as they have a respectable performance, and it's a 4-quarter football game, and they run the table after that, they could be in the playoffs again. That's very possible, but first things first, and that's they got to show that they belong on the same field with a program like Georgia. That's been the problem with Notre Dame over the last several years, and that's what we talked about at the beginning of the season. Notre Dame's schedule a lot different than it was last year.
Yeah, I mean they need team. They play Virginia next week. After that, they need teams like they need some of those teams to play well, and look for those to be quality wins to give them a chance. I can't see them making the playoffs if they lose this game. I just think it'll be looked down as their one big test, and they failed. But we never know. There's got to see how they play this week, and got to see how they play the rest of the year.
Yeah, because also fans just they don't want to see it. You've had your shot. All right, Auburn, Texas A&M, and I got to tell you, this is even though this is a 3.5 point spread, an evenly matched game. I really like Texas A&M this week. They've got a lot of good trends, too, going for them. The 7-2-1 ATS last 10 is a home favorite. And get this, Auburn is 1-16 against the spread their last 17 when they face a 500 opponent or better, with revenge off a straight-up win being Texas A&M. And more importantly, I think this one really the other one, you can go a little fluky. This one, 0-4, straight up and against the spread the last 2 years away from home.
Yeah, I mean, this series has been dominated by the road team. Auburn has won all 3 trips to College Station since A&M joined the SEC. It's Bo Nix's first road game. He played a neutral site game against Oregon, but this is going into 90,000 or 100,000, whatever it is there. His numbers haven't been great. You give him credit for winning that Oregon game, making the plays he needed to, but from an efficiency standpoint, he was not really good against Tulane or Oregon. So I'm with you. I like Texas A&M. I think both teams' defensive lines will kind of have their way with the other team's offensive line. Big bounce back game for Kellen Mond. He needs to play well against a good defense. That'll be one of the storylines to watch.
Yeah, and it is I think it is important to note those two things. Is that Auburn away from home, not just of course on the road, but a neutral site away from home. And I'm not talking about I'm just basically going into a situation where you mix their poor road accomplishments recently with Nix and his first true road start as a true freshman at that stadium, and I think you're asking for trouble. And Texas A&M needs something positive too. And
that's a huge game for both teams. I mean, not that either of these teams is going to win the West, but the loser of this game, it's both teams look at it and say, we need to win this game if we're going to be relevant.
Michigan and Wisconsin. And I got to tell you, I felt pretty confident about Army and those points that Michigan was giving up. And that was an easy one. And I'm feeling the same way. And I hate to say it as a Michigan fan, but I feel real confident about Wisconsin in this game. I thought that this was just going to be a different look for Michigan when the season began, and it just hasn't. Now, maybe with the bye, something will change. And I'll be psyched if it does, and I hope I'm wrong. But until I see that, I got to go big on Wisconsin. This is the best stretch that this program has had against Michigan ever, dating back to 1892 when the series began. Wisconsin has beaten Michigan 5 out of the last 9 times. Let's also keep in mind last year's 25-point loss was the biggest blowout for Paul Chryst ever, and of course on the losing side. And Wisconsin has covered 5 straight at home against Michigan, thrown on top of the fact that Michigan 0-6 against the spread the last 6 since last year. They haven't covered a game in 6, and they're 0-5 against the spread as a dog under Jim Harbaugh. So every time Harbaugh's a dog, they don't cover. And surprisingly enough, when he has rest, or the team has rest, well, Harbaugh, because he's been here for a few years, they've only covered 1 out of 7. So everything tells me to go with Wisconsin in this one.
Yeah, I have no feel for this game. It's a huge game for Michigan, obviously. It's an important game for Wisconsin. Wisconsin can still win the Big Ten West if they lose this game because there's so much parity out there. But Michigan, to be the national player, needs to win this game. And I really have no feel for it. I mean, all the signs from what we've seen on the field so far point to Wisconsin. They've been dominant, only team in the nation that has not allowed a point, but they haven't really played anyone yet. Michigan hasn't necessarily played the most difficult schedule, but they've allowed 42 points. They haven't been great. Now, offense hasn't clicked like we expected. So, big thing here to me is Wisconsin's offense has a chance to be more dynamic. Quintez Cephas is back. He was suspended for, I think, a year for off-the-field stuff, but he was exonerated there. He's got 9 catches for 169 yards, allows them to do a little bit more in the passing game there. I am, again, don't have a strong feel for this game. I'm staying true to Michigan, our preseason pick to win the Big Ten West, Big Ten East at Athlon Sports. One more week, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. Then if not, I'm breaking up with them.
All right. Well, and this is also, you talk about Michigan, but realistically, this also tells us whether or not Wisconsin can be more of just a divisional champ.
Yeah.
Can they impress enough that we would feel that if they played Ohio State in the championship game, that they could compete and possibly beat the Buckeyes? So we'll see. Cone played really well in his last game against a bad team, but at least he played well. He's a young quarterback. If they can, and you mentioned Cephas, if they could throw the ball a little bit with Taylor in the backfield, we know that they could play defense with Leonard as the coordinator. They could be a very scary team, and this game is going to tell us a whole lot about both teams.
Yeah, totally agree. It's maybe, I don't know if it's the best game. It might be the most intriguing game of the weekend.
And I think a big spot that Michigan needs to get Peoples-Jones out there.
Yeah.
He needs to play.
Yes.
He might be their best offensive player. So,
yep.
All right. Also, Oklahoma State, Texas. Now, the line dropped from 7 to 5. You have them as one of your top picks of the week. I'm not surprised about that because, when you look at it, you're like, okay, well, Texas could be a national championship sleeper. They took LSU down to the wire. Oklahoma State, we don't know much about them, but they've blown out the teams that they're supposed to blow out. Typical Gundy team. What's different? But the thing that would scare me about taking Texas in this spot is that Oklahoma State has won 4 straight against Texas, 4 straight years. They've won 7 of the last 9 against Texas. Texas has dropped 5 straight at home against Oklahoma State. And, Texas has got a couple of guys banked up in the secondary. We know Wallace is a big-time receiver. The thing I would be a little bit worried about is Oklahoma State, freshman quarterback, big spot. How does he handle it? You got Hubbard. You got Wallace. If the freshman quarterback plays well, this is a real good football game. But we just have no idea. You're banking on the fact that he's not going to play all that well, or at least that Texas would just outscore Oklahoma State.
Yeah, this is to me is a pro-Texas pick. Oklahoma State's one of 2 teams nationally with 2 true road wins. San Diego State is the other. So they've been on the road, but this will be, obviously a more hostile environment. They just have not played a good defense yet, and I think Texas, well, we're not sure how good their defense is. I think they'll score. I think Oklahoma State's defense is lacking. So, I think Oklahoma State will play well. I just like Texas to outscore.
All right, now quickly, let's go through the conferences. SEC, big win for Florida against Kentucky last week, but they lose Franks. I don't know whether or not that's a bad thing. Trask comes in, does a really good job, and they're a 14-point favorite against Tennessee, and they've handled Tennessee pretty easily lately. So what do you think? What do you think about the performance of this kid? Because he actually had a chance. There was a good chance that he was going to take over for Franks last year after the Missouri loss. They lost back-to-back games, but then he got injured in practice. So Franks kept playing, and then they went on a roll. And Franks, of course, has been the starter ever since. So I think there's a chance that Florida maybe doesn't miss a beat.
Yeah, I think Franks might have more upside. Trask might be more consistent. We don't know because we haven't seen him a lot. He came and sparked the team. That first touchdown, you kind of sense it in the crowd at Kentucky saying, because they were controlling the game there.
Yeah, right.
Like
Alabama.
Yeah, I like Tennessee to cover in this one. Florida's offense scares me. They're just not running the ball very well. Michael Pirine has not been effective. They have some injuries. Jabari Zuniga might not play. Henderson might be limited. Their cornerback there. Tennessee played a lot better last week. I know it was Chattanooga. I think they kind of got the monkey off their back. 2 losses. I think going on the road will be a good thing for them because I think it's kind of toxic in Knoxville with the way they started there. So I think Florida wins this game, but I do not think they win it comfortably.
Okay. What about the other games in the SEC? Cal, Ole Miss, and Kentucky, Mississippi State. Now, Stevens looks like he'll play again. He was questionable last week, and he played, so he's probably going to play, and they ain't going to need him because the other kid doesn't have much of an arm. He's more of a runner. And, by the way, Kansas State came through for us last week, so that was nice. Yep. But Kentucky on the road, Sawyer Smith. And then you got Cal, Ole Miss. Ole Miss wants revenge after losing to them a couple years ago. I mean, you got to believe this is going to be a low-scoring game. Cal and Ole Miss, both offenses not really doing much. And you took Cal in this game, right?
Yeah, I took Cal +2. I think their defense is going to travel. They've been very good. They've allowed 3 non-garbage touchdowns in 3 games this year. Offense is not very good, but Ole Miss's offense has been a disappointment. Ole Miss's defense has actually been better than I thought they'd be, and their offense has not been good. I like Cal. I think they're playing with a lot of confidence there. I like Kentucky to cover Mississippi State. I think I'm not very high in this Mississippi State team right now. They've regressed defensively as we thought, and they've just been average offensively. I think Kentucky played pretty well last week. Sawyer Smith was good at times, but made some big mistakes. If you can avoid those mistakes, I think Kentucky can win that outright. One game that we did not mention is another important game is South Carolina going to Missouri. Missouri has played very, very well at home since that opening loss to Wyoming there, but that was a big number too. I think it was 10.5 maybe. I like South Carolina to cover at Missouri.
Yeah, the kid, Helinski, actually put up some pretty decent numbers against Alabama. They were just overmatched.
Some big plays. Yeah, they had some big plays. You just have to be perfect to beat Alabama. I mean, they didn't score in the red zone. They left some points on the field there, and you have to be perfect to beat Alabama.
And by the way, in that game, keep in mind South Carolina 3-0, straight up and against the spread the last 3 years versus Missouri, and South Carolina is 9-1 against the spread on the road over the last couple of years. So that's shows you that maybe South Carolina is the way to go. And Kentucky's covered 4 out of 6, all as dogs against Mississippi State. Beat them last year outright at home. Remember that game? The defense dominated Mississippi State.
Totally. That was the game we realized where Kentucky, they might be pretty good.
Yeah. And by the way, the Cal-Ole Miss game, the other thing I wanted to bring up in that one, Ole Miss, under head coach Matt Luke, 0-5, straight up and against the spread as a home dog. So
interesting.
Nice that you like Cal in that one. Okay,
so.
Into the Big Ten. Now, you're taking Pitt to beat Central Florida outright. Great game. Last rivalry matchup against Penn State for a while, unfortunately. But you must have liked what you've seen, and why not? They're starting to throw the ball more, and they're looking good to put up the numbers and to play. They outgained Penn State last week. That's impressive. I think Penn State is a little shaky too, but that's a different story. But still, that's got to be a confidence builder for the program. Revenge situation. Central Florida blew them out last year. So critical call, of course, that everybody was talking about last week with Pittsburgh kicking the field goal or trying to kick the field goal at the 1-yard line late in the game. Down 7.
Yeah, I don't think Pitt's going to win this game, but we pick a double-digit dog to win outright.
But you could take Northwestern.
I could, but they're 9.5-point favorites.
They're 10, so...
I'm a rule follower.
Okay.
All
right.
So.
That's okay.
So, yeah, I mean, I just think this is one of those – everything points to UCF. They blew them out last year. They've been blowing everyone out. So I was like, hey, let's – a lot of times when everything seems I fell for that trap in several games last week. That the BYU USC game was one of them. When everything just seems too easy. So this one seemed a little too easy for me. Like you said, Pitt, it's the first time they've thrown the ball with success in recent years. So, maybe D'Antonio can get down. Not D'Antonio, Narduzzi can get down. They can kick about 10 field goals, 4-yard line.
I mean, Central Florida is just so scary to go against. I mean, they've
Yes.
covered.
They've been very good. Been very
and
good.
they're so explosive offensively that they're a great team to back, no matter how many points they're giving up.
Yeah.
So
they score.
And by the way, Gabriel's the right choice.
Yeah.
So they're going to be Heupel should probably not go anywhere unless until hey, you know what? You give me a big job with a big school, I'll go. But if not, I'm staying here until I get my big job because he's going to have it made at Central Florida for a while now.
Yeah.
All right. Also, by the way, Temple over Maryland. So that put to bed Maryland and what they did the first couple of weeks because Temple showed them what happens when they face a real defense.
Yeah, Maryland just talked about all week what all those trips inside the 10 or the red zone just could not score, and all those had their opportunities, just couldn't get it done. Good defense for Temple.
And by the way, I think Temple is a good pick this week. Buffalo hasn't been all that impressive so far, but that's not a surprise, even though they were impressive for a half against Penn State. But get this, Temple is 8-0 against the spread the last 8 as a road favorite of more than 3 points. So this is a good spot for Temple against Buffalo, and they are in a revenge spot because Buffalo beat Temple last year.
Yes, handily, I believe.
All right. So also, quickly, Minnesota. Wow. I mean, the way they've won every game this year, it's and it's not like they've beaten like powerful teams, but hey, you win, and that's all that matters. They're going to be a very interesting team as we thought they were going to be once they get into the Big Ten.
They've been losing at the 7 mark of all 3 games, and they've won.
That's you know what, a win's a win. As long as you're not wagering on Minnesota, with big spreads. Okay, ACC, Clemson throttles Syracuse. Here's the key thing in that game, though. In that, at the point when it was 17-6, and DeVito throws that stupid interception, and then basically 3rd down, and the dude can't tackle. What's his name for Clemson? The receiver, and he takes it to the house, and the game's over. But you throw that out, and that's a football game. It was about to be 17-13 early in the 3rd quarter. So once again, Clemson is just doing what they have to do to win football games. It's almost like I'm getting a feeling that maybe they're just bored or something. I can't imagine they're not as good as we think.
Like I said with the South Carolina, Alabama, with Clemson, you just have to be so perfect to beat them. And I know you said it was, but you make mistakes when you play them. And DeVito made a mistake. And they've got between Ross and Higgins and Rodgers. Rodgers has been banged up, but when he's coming off that ACL, he's explosive. They're so difficult to defend. And Lawrence hasn't been perfect. I guess we expect him to be perfect
that's right.
After last year.
Yep.
He's just been good. So I'm still thinking Clemson's pretty darn good. I mean, I think we're just when you're that elite, all we do is look for holes.
Yeah.
Sure, they have holes, but I think they have fewer holes than any team in the country.
Yeah, and it's tough when you're a true freshman and everybody's saying, "Oh, you should allow him to get drafted, so he should be the first overall pick." I mean, come on. I mean,
still needs to grow.
Yeah. By the way. Big win for Virginia over Florida State. You don't want to lose that football game.
Yeah, I mean, that's just one of those, if you really are the type of team we think you can be, Virginia, you need to win that game. They answered the test in week 1 at Pitt, and they answered the test barely against Florida State at home.
Almost got robbed, though, that last drive for Florida State on that 4th down that the officials called pass interference. I mean, I was like, you got to be kidding me. It was just a terrible call, kept the drive alive, but Virginia was able to hold on that last drive. North Carolina keeps getting into these close games. When you do that, unlike Minnesota, but it'll eventually catch up to Minnesota, they just weren't able to finally close the deal, and Wake Forest got a big win.
Yeah, North Carolina was anemic on offense. I think they punted on 7 of their first 8 drives, and they fumbled on the other. They got it going in the second half, but they put themselves in too big of a hole, so Wake Forest with a big 9-conference win over North Carolina.
And App State and North Carolina, first time that these two schools are going to face each other, I don't know, it's since 1940 which is crazy. But here, Evans is a fantastic player, and if you haven't seen this kid play yet for App State, you'll get a chance this week. But get this, App State's 0-7 straight up since joining the FBS in 2014 versus Power 5 schools. They haven't beaten one of these teams yet, and they're a 3-point dog on the road.
They've come close. Overtime against Tennessee, I think they lost 8 by 1, so they've come close.
They have. What do you think about this one?
Spread was a little narrow for me, 3. I mean, I think Carolina wins this, but something tells me that the boys in Vegas spreads that close. They're seeing something. App State, it's amazing to think that their talent level could be comparable to North Carolina. I mean, I know it's not all about recruiting, but I'll go Carolina at home.
All right, Big 12, TCU over Purdue. And TCU, if they could just find a quarterback and maybe receivers that can catch the football, they could be dangerous, but the passing game is non-existent. But Purdue's in big trouble. We both were confident. Yeah.
Sindelar's hurt.
What's that?
Yes, with Sindelar being hurt,
Yes.
you go Gary Patterson against a freshman quarterback. That was not surprising.
And we both liked Kansas State in that one, so big win for them. West Virginia gets off the schneid against NC State, but the big story for the little guy is Kansas coming back and destroying Boston College after being down early. That's good for them. Now can they keep it up and win and beat West Virginia this week?
I don't think so. West Virginia was kind of the team of the week for me in week 3. I mean, they so bad. Their running game was so bad in the first 2 weeks, and they just turned it on. Neil Brown did some nice things there against what we thought or think is a decent NC State team. So I think Kansas's magic ends after the winning streak is snapped at 1.
And by the way, SMU's at TCU this week, and I've really liked what I've seen at SMU this year so far. This is a rivalry that's gone on for a long time, 99th meeting. I think SMU has got a shot here. I think this is going to be a close football game. TCU is just 2-12 against the spread as a home favorite in the last 14. I think this is going to be a close football game.
Yeah, Bouchel's playing very well there. I think TCU is sneaky better than we think, though. I mean, they've been dominant defensively. They've only played 2 games. I know I just said Sindelar's hurt in Plummer's first game there, but you hold Rondell Moore to 3 catches.
Oh, yeah.
TCU is a good defensive
No,
player.
the defense is excellent. The running game is strong. That's why I was saying if they had a quarterback and some receivers, they could be a playoff contender. But maybe one of these quarterbacks, and they still got a couple of guys that are trying to come back, some talented kids on the shelf. So it's a long season. You never know.
Yeah.
We'll keep an eye on TCU, of course. In the Pac-12, Stanford is in big trouble. I know that they have a great trend against Oregon that usually, especially with Costello, and I'm a big Costello fan, that I would take Stanford in this spot. Get this. They are 8-1 straight up, 9-0 against the spread as home dogs since 2007, 4-0 straight up and against the spread as home dogs under David Shaw. They're a 10.5-point home dog against an Oregon team they've beaten 3 straight years straight up and against the spread. But I just can't take Stanford the way they're playing, and I think Oregon's been looking great. And because of the Auburn loss, that's one of those losses that if Oregon runs the table, they could be in the playoffs.
Yeah, but Stanford has been dreadful, pass defense against two freshmen the past 2 weeks. They're giving up tons of yards. Quarterbacks are thrown for, don't have it in front of me. I thought I did, like averaging over 10 yards per attempt or something like that. Just dreadful defensively, and just not enough offensively. Costello has, he's been okay. I like Oregon in the spot. I think Stanford's just very average.
All right. Also, just taking a look at a few other games to keep an eye on. You like Utah State against San Diego State. They're a 4-point road favorite. Look, San Diego State's winning games. That's nice. They're relying on their defense as usual. But Utah State, I mean, Love is a fantastic talent, a quarterback. They're putting up a ton of points. And I look at this one. The only thing I'm a little bit worried about in this matchup is that San Diego State under Rocky Long is a very good home dog. 6-2 ATS is a home dog under Long. And by the way, Utah State has not beaten San Diego State since 1967.
Didn't realize it was that bad there. Utah and San Diego State's 3-0. Like we've talked about, their offense has struggled there. I think this is, if Utah State had made one more play or Wake didn't convert a fourth down pass, that win there, and the spread might be a little bit different there. I like Utah State, just offensively to win this game by like a touchdown.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, they're a better team than San Diego State. So it's just a matter of, can they get this long losing streak off the schneid against the Aztecs? That's what you got to keep an eye on. And just to run out the key injuries to keep an eye on. By the way, Derek Brown, I think he's going to play for Auburn. That's a key player for Auburn.
Yes.
Might be their best defensive player.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Corey Sutton's supposed to be off. He's now officially off his suspension, the star wide receiver for Appalachian State. So keep that in mind. He'll be playing his first game of the season against North Carolina. Colin Hill's out for the year with his third ACL. And I got to tell you, I'm real upset about how he got hurt. I think that's one of those situations where the official has to throw out the player, because you cannot why do you think those are penalties? You cannot go at quarterbacks like that. It's just, I was just really sick to see that happen to Hill.
Yeah, senior, I think, career over, obviously difficult spot. And I don't know, you might be getting this when John Runyon's supposed to be back with starting offensive tackle for Michigan, which obviously helped that offensive line.
Yeah, he's supposed to be, so we'll see if that works out. Also, the other one is B.J. Smith, the star running back for Troy, is out for the year. That's a tough blow for Troy if you're a Troy fan. So those are some of the other key injuries of note to keep an eye on. By the way, FIU, Morgan's been banged up, but that other quarterback, the kid who came in, Kalen Wiggins, was running all over the place in his last game. I think they should just go ahead and start Wiggins in the game against Louisiana Tech on Friday. But
yeah, they've been one of the more disappointing teams so far.
All right, and did we get all your picks in, by the way?
Let me grab my sheet real quick. I have FSU minus. We didn't talk about this game real quick.
FSU and Louisville.
FSU, I think FSU, for all the negatives we've said about them, they are a player two or three plays away from being 3-0. I just think there's a talent difference, and hopefully they won't screw it up in the second half like they have. 6.5 over Louisville. We talked about Texas -5 over Oklahoma State. Utah State -4, San Diego State. Cal +2, Ole Miss. BC -7 over Rutgers. I think a little market correction for BC, not as bad as they were last week.
Well, Satowski's starting now for Rutgers.
Yes.
So.
Northwestern +9.5 over Michigan State.
10. All right. So, by the way, Pass may not play for Louisville, the quarterback.
Right. I don't think he is playing, but that's.
You think that matters?
That could be. No. Cunningham played pretty well last week.
I don't think that matters either. I still think you have guts taking Florida State, by the way, so good for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, well, hey, one of us has to have it. All right,
sure.
Mitch, I appreciate it as always. We'll talk to you again next week.
Sounds good, Greg. Take care.
Take care.